Hello everyone, I'm here at the library and I wanted to talk about a new book that just came in. I would say that it's for kids in grades 4 through 6, and it's called The In-Between by Rebecca K.S. Ansari. I read it last night and I have to tell you it's very intriguing. Cooper is the main character. He's a 12-year-old boy. He's not in a great place in his life. His parents have divorced. His father is remarried and has children with his new wife. He's just not feeling so great about all that right now. He's got a little sister named Jess, and there's a girl who lives in the house across the street from him. And she's not very friendly, and she's actually seems to be on the kind of creepy side. Whenever Cooper sees her, she's swinging on a swing in her yard, and all she ever does is stare at him. She's not very friendly. At the same time, his little sister Jess has read about a fatal train crash that occurred 100 years before. And there was an unidentified victim of that train crash. It was a young boy, and the only thing that they noted about this young boy, besides the fact that nobody claimed him, was he had this odd insignia on his jacket, which is like sort of like a badge. And Jess has noticed that this creepy girl has the same insignia on her jacket. Okay, as the story evolves, there are more unidentified victims of different tragedies. So the author brings in a little history here because they are real historical tragedies that occurred throughout time. Cooper and Jess come to realize that this creepy girl is somehow connected to all of these victims. So this story has elements of mystery, there's a little history, as I said, there's intrigue, adventure, and of course there's a supernatural component. It's a little scary. Don't read it if you're home alone. I'm going to read the first chapter now. If you think you'll enjoy it, put it on your list of books to be read. The In-Between by Rebecca K.S. Ansari. Just one chapter. Bear with me. The girl was staring at him again, like she had every day since moving into the house across the alley 3 months ago. The slight, pale girl sat perched on her new tree swing, swaying gently, her eyes prying into Cooper's life. It was normally annoying, bordering on creepy even, but today her presence only served to enrage him further as he exploded out of his back door, the sickening news his mother had shared ricocheting around in his skull. Seeing the girl there, Cooper bellowed, "Can't you just leave me alone?" He already knew she wouldn't answer. She never did. Her expression didn't change one bit. She simply looked up and down the alley as if checking to make sure they were alone before settling her eyes on him again. Cooper kicked a dog-chewed tennis ball that had somehow ended up in his driveway, sending it like a missile against the garage door. It almost hit him on the rebound, and he had to awkwardly dodge it. He flushed furiously, both with embarrassment and at the thought of what the girl was about to witness. A stiff Chicago October wind tore a wave of yellowed leaves from their branches, raining them down on him as he pulled his father's pocket watch from his jeans. For a fraction of a second, he hesitated. Oh, how Cooper loved this watch. He used to sneak it from his father's bedside table and bring it back to his room, where he would press the gold plunger at the top to open the cover and feel the soft click of the latch as he shut it over and over. The sensation simple, satisfying, and comforting. Cooper had always imagined its original owner, his great-great-grandfather, doing the same, checking the time on his way to the bank or the train or wherever people went back then. "You are the next in a long line of Stuart men to have this," his father had said with pride when he'd finally gifted it to Cooper. Cooper hadn't known yet that being a Stuart man was nothing to be proud of. How stupid he'd been. It was just a dumb watch, just another thing his father had ruined. He opened the cover for the last time, the chain coiled on the cement beneath it as he set the watch on the ground with a gentle care that came by habit. Rather ironic now. In the back corner of the garage, Cooper grabbed a cobweb-covered baseball bat from its home amid the collection of neglected sporting gear. The bat had been another gift from his father, and Cooper had told his mom months ago that she could throw it away. Now he was glad she hadn't listened to him. Back when his parents were still married, Cooper hadn't known which was worse: the many times his dad was too busy working to show up to his games with all the other parents, or the times his dad did manage to make it, shouting endless, useless bits of advice from the stands every time Cooper came up to the plate. Choke up on the bat, step into it, see yourself making contact. Finally, he could put those words to good use. Cooper walked back out to the driveway and smiled grimly as he placed his feet the way his dad had shown him. He tapped the tip of the bat to the shiny glass face of the watch, his other hand up in the air, signaling to an imaginary umpire for time as he stepped into position. He glanced quickly across the alley to make sure the girl had a good view as he wrapped both hands around the grip and raised the bat over his head. With a wail, he brought it down. One hit would have been plenty, but Cooper struck the mangled pieces over and over again, each hit punctuated with a cry. Springs, gears, and shards of glass shot in all directions. He felt a small cut across his ankle from a flying bit of metal, but he didn't stop, even when nothing remained at the spot he continued to pound. The clang of aluminum on cement rang across the neighborhood like a church bell. Only when the jarring in his hands and shoulders screamed for him to stop did he let the bat clatter to the ground. Then, quite unexpectedly, Cooper crumpled down beside it. In an instant, his proud fury turned to humiliation as he was powerless to stop the pathetic display of tears that overcame him. And with them came the same question he'd been asking for 3 years. Why, Dad? How could the same person who used to chase him and his sister around the house to blow raspberries on their stomachs shed his whole family like he was a hermit crab ditching an old shell? How could he slip into a new life just as easily, with a new wife and a new kid, as if Cooper, Jess, and their mom were just some bad dream he had? Was his father chasing that kid around right now, celebrating the fact that there was about to be a new baby brother or sister in the house? Cooper was sure the scene was happier there than it had been in his kitchen a minute ago when his mother had shared the same news with him and Jess. But at least Mom had told them this time. Just you wait, Cooper thought grimly to his unborn half-sibling. Someday he'll ditch you, too. He covered his face to hide a fresh wave of sobs in case the girl across the alley was still watching. He tried to swallow them down, choke them back, gagging from the effort. Then came the second question he'd been asking himself for almost as long. Why do I still care? He'd sworn he would never let his dad hurt him again. His father didn't deserve any feelings from Cooper. None. And yet, Cooper's tears dried over the next many minutes, and he lifted his head to see watch debris scattered around him. A gust of wind blew another flurry of leaves down the alley, dragging their brittle edges against the cracked asphalt. A black bird flew overhead, cawing loudly. Cooper watched it sail past and wiped at his cheeks before slowly rising and brushing off the back of his pants. All of that, and he felt no better. He looked across the alley to see if his violent outburst had satisfied the girl's seemingly unending interest in him. If it had, it didn't show. She just continued to swing, lightly and calmly, her eyes never unlocking from him as the rope creaked against the bark of the large bough. The prim private school uniform she always wore, a navy blue skirt and blazer with gold-stitched crest, remained unruffled. "What'd you think?" Cooper asked loudly against the wind. "Did you enjoy the show? Don't forget to tip your server." She said nothing. The irony of it was not lost on Cooper. He hadn't known anyone could be less interested in making friends than he was. He looked beyond her to her house, newly restored, clean and expensive, the nicest house on the block. He'd never seen the sibling who lived in the second of 2 upstairs bedrooms with the windows that faced his house. Cooper assumed it was a sister who was much messier than this girl. He'd never seen the girl's parents either, who he assumed left early for work and came home late from their clearly well-paying jobs. They had transformed the previously abandoned house into a gorgeous home in a flash, it seemed, like on one of those reality TV shows. Cooper, Jess, and their mother had gone on a summer trip to their grandparents, and when they had returned, the makeover was complete. Butter yellow paint had replaced the previous chipped brown siding, and new windows sparkled where dusty, broken panes had previously let in the rain and the wind. The yard was flush with thick grass and potted plants instead of the previous dirt and trash, and down the path from the rebuilt wraparound porch was, no joke, an actual white picket fence. When Cooper's family had arrived home from that trip, he had marveled at how amazing the house looked. But then the look in his mother's eyes made him immediately regret saying anything. Their own house desperately needed new paint and windows, 2 of the many things his parents had said they were going to renovate when they bought a cheap house in a neighborhood that was supposed to be on the rise. They had managed a new roof and heating system over the years, but then his father had left, moving with his new wife to a pristine suburb that didn't need to rise. It was already at the top. His mom's only response was a sigh and, "Okay, Cooper." As for their neighborhood, It never did end up rising, and after that day a few months ago, Cooper never mentioned the house across the alley to his mother again, even though everything about the house seemed perfect. Everything, that is, except the quiet girl with the cheerless stare. Slowly, with eyes that burned from the cutting wind, Cooper backed away. That was when the girl nodded once at him, almost imperceptibly, like granting him leave. It sent a chill down his spine. He turned and quickly climbed the cement steps to his back door. As he turned the knob, he took one last glance back. He blinked to make sure he was seeing clearly, and his breath caught in his throat. Cooper had only looked away for an instant, but now, across the alley, all he saw was a gently swaying, empty swing. The girl was gone. That's the first chapter of The In-Between by Rebecca K.S. Ansari. Thank you.